Hey folks, it's your man Manny and I'm here with Coco. And I wanted to do a video talking about something. It might be a little controversial, but the reality is you really shouldn't be teaching your dog to sit when they're very young and making a big deal about it. Because the reality is through teaching a sit and having a young dog learn to hold a sit in the face of distractions like you pulling food away from them, you can have several really serious consequences happen. The first thing we see very often is it can become hard to teach down. You put the dog in a sit and then you try to teach them down and then you go, okay, follow my hand now into a down. And then they say, no, I'm in a sit command. If I follow your hand, I'm not going to get any food. Remember when you put me in the sit with your hand motion and then you pulled your hand away and I followed your hand and then I didn't get any food. So I'm not going to follow your hand into a down position. I'm going to sit here and wait for you to bring the food to me. And so as we've been trying to shape this down with her, we can see that she's confused because she says, hey, I've gotten so many treats for sitting on my bum. It's hard for me to understand that from that position of sitting on my bum, I'm supposed to do an additional movement of moving my front legs forward. So it's much better off just to have your dog practice following food. If you want to work on them practicing stay, put them on one of these beds that you see leaned up on my stove in the background and tie them up and get them used to being tied up, like maybe next to you. Teach the stay that way rather than teach the stay through telling them, hey, sit, and if you move forward, I'm not going to give you any food. Okay, the second issue that can be created here is you work so much on sit and the sit stay, and then you go to work on recall and call the dog over to you to get food, and the dog says, no, 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 no. Early on, you told me that sometimes when you call me over to you, or sometimes I think I'm supposed to go over to you, I'm not. And I was in a sit one time when I was really young, and I went to go over to you because you had treats, and then you told me, no, I wasn't going to get any food unless I stayed where I was. I'd much rather have the dog just be obsessed with me and me having food, and as soon as I have food, the dog wants to follow me around, than I would be trying to have the dog sit and hold it when I have food. Once again, I'll teach stay through having the dog on a harness or a very wide collar under supervision, close to me, tied up. That's how they learn to stay. Or I'm just simply holding the leash and they learn that they're going to stay next to me. Okay, now the third issue that I see with your sit is when you've taught the dog to sit like that in terms of hold it there and then I'll give you food afterwards. Okay, what can happen is you very clearly have taught contingency based on food. And after 3 or 4 reps sometimes of doing it that way, the dog eventually says, hey man, there's no food here. Like I'm not going to hold the command forever because eventually I give up hope that there's food and I break the command because I associate sitting with, which is sit and hope that you will get food. And once I realize you're not going to give me food, I'm going to get out of the command. So rather than teach the dog to, hold the sit while you have the food and not try to get it, like I said, have them go into a sit for a second and then release them in an excited fashion, release them and have them chase the food, and then teach your sit with a leash. You could see this young dog already has a slip lead on. So teach your sit with leash pressure, and then you can begin to tell the dog, hey, sit, and then there's leash pressure, and then you sit. And this is more about me and you and the leash than it is about whether or not I have food or not, and my hand. But when you only have the opportunity to use food, what's going to happen is you're using your hand so much, the dog just becomes so obsessively focused on your hand, and they just put all their attention into staring at your hand all the time. So when you want to teach a sit and have them hold it, do that by teaching them to sit with the leash on. And then when they get up, you can tug on the leash and say, sit. And then the dog would sit again. Then you could release them and reward them. So release the dog to reward them from a sit. Show them what I mean. Like put her in a sit, Jeff, and then toss the food.
Sit. Good. Break.
Right? So he says good. Dog stays there. He says break. He tosses the food. The dog understands. Hey, I'm doing it good. He didn't have the food ready yet. Then he said break. And like right now, he could just say break and toss the food.
Break.
And then the other thing is, like I said, use your leash, sit, sit, good. And you begin to put the dog into commands with the leash, sit, You could still help the dog if they need help during this phase. You can see he still helps the dog. Sit. Oh. Sit. Break. And the only thing I would do different right there is I would make it more clear that the dog's being released. So, and we'll talk about that in a video right now. I'm going to do that video right now. So remember, as always, folks, we don't blame them. We train them. If we love them, we lead them. And as always, you can find me online, followleaderk9.com. You can find my poetry book on Amazon, Loving, Leading, and Losing Stories from the Dogs That Train Me. So yeah, moral of the story, don't focus so much on having your dog hold a sit when they're young, and try these other things, and teaching the down, having the dog recall, and having the dog eventually learn to stay without food. It's all going to be actually a lot easier. Okay, take care, folks.